Hello, friends, and welcome to Rolling with Ruel. I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening wherever you are. It is 9 a.m. Pacific where I'm at here in Southern California. Very nice day out today. It's actually it's sunny, but it's a little chilly out here in Southern California. That's what we call Southern California winters. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Excuse me. Welcome to the show. This is Ruel Reads. I normally stream board game plays here on my Twitch channel. Played a lot of different board games with friends and family. But every now and then I like to change things up. I think we call it doing variety streams, right? Good morning, Amanda Panna. Amanda Panna is our chat moderator friend, so please keep things PG-13 today. This is a family-friendly channel, or actually family-friendly stream, because we are reading some great Star Wars books today. We're celebrating the release of Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, amongst others. There are a few books that Del Rey Books has released today. This is one of them, Light of the Jedi. Super excited about the High Republic. This is the world of Star Wars as it is before the prequel movies. So before Episode 1, I think a couple of hundred years or so before. So this is a brand new series that they're working on, a brand new world. They've got books, graphic novels, comics coming out. I'm assuming eventually they're going to get to some kind of live action stuff. Excuse me, either movies or a TV series. We'll see. They haven't announced anything, but it just seems like it's ripe for that type of adaptation. So I want to shout out to Del Rey Books for sending me the early copies. I've gone through part of this one. I also had the a couple of weeks ago. If you join me then, we read part of the one that's targeted towards middle schoolers. There's also another book as well that's out. I don't have that one yet, but Light of the Jedi, I'm super excited about this. Bottom Shelf Video Game says, I'm freezing, wrapped in a blanket, sweater, and beanie with a heater on. It's 55 degrees. Yeah, that's definitely not Southern California weather, Bottom Shelf. It's chilly out here, but I'm in a shirt in my room. If I went outside, I'd put on a light jacket. But anyways, hope you're doing well. We usually talk about stream snacks on streams here during the board gaming streams, but we can always talk about stream snacks, right? This morning, Michelle made for breakfast. We just had we did like breakfast tacos basically. It was scrambled eggs, spinach, and a freshly made tortilla. Oh, it was really good. I actually forgot to put salsa on mine because, confession, I literally just ate like 5 minutes ago. Got a late start this morning. But yeah, bottom shelf, I can't handle the cold either. I'm not a cold type of guy. I'm not a cold or a heat type of guy now that I think about it. I don't like it when it's too hot. I don't like it when it's too cold. But really looking forward to this. I really enjoy reading, and that's one of my goals. I typically don't set New Year's Eve or New Year's resolutions, but I just sort of vaguely make some goals, things I want to do in the new year, and this is one of them. I want to read more. I've always been a reader throughout my life, but I think these last 2 or 3 years I've sort of fallen off the wagon. I have not read as much as I used to, so I went back on Goodreads and started one of the Goodreads challenge. Oh, thanks. That's my wife, Michelle. She's off camera. She's delivering my cup of tea. Thank you, man. And so I've got my teas because I'm going to be reading. I know I need it for my throat because it just soothes the vocal cords, right? A little hot tea with lemon and honey. Real Goldilocks Capulet. Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold. That's me. I am Goldilocks. Oh, I love it. Y'all are funny. What was I saying? Oh, so I used to love to read. I've always been a reader throughout my life. I definitely get that from my mom. My mom was a reader. She still is. She doesn't read as much now. She's more. She likes to play her solitaire now on her iPad. But she was just growing up. There was always books in the house, and we were always reading. Me and my brothers, and I was definitely probably the most voracious reader when we were younger. I think the middle brother. I'm the oldest of three. I think my middle brother probably reads more than I do at this point. But this year I really wanted to get back into it. So I'm on Goodreads. You can find me there, Ruel Gaviola, and I've set myself a challenge. I want to read 26 books this year, and I have read one already. It was a lighter read, and I'll show that to you right now. So This book, it's actually a little series of books. This was a total impulse buy the other day. I've been reading a blog for like 20 years by a gentleman named Mark Evanier. He is a writer in the comic book industry, but he also wrote for television, I believe some movies as well. Actually, I don't know. I know for sure television and books, comic books. But he's also released a few books, and one of them just came out. It's a history of these Marvel mini books. So this is you can tell it's pretty small. It's a collection of 5 mini books. And apparently back in the 60s, Marvel came out with their little comic books that were the size of a postage stamp. So you've got, Captain America, Thor, Spider-Man, and so forth. And what this company did was they reprinted them in a much more manageable size. So this is sort of cool. So you have the Incredible Hulk. This is what it would look like, but imagine a postage size book, and they've reprinted it in a more manageable size like this. So this is obviously you couldn't put too much art on a postage stamp. This is what it looked like inside, and it's such an interesting history because these were the ones that you would get in those gumball machines, and they came in like the little plastic bubble type things. You could either get like, I don't know, candy or like, a little toy or whatever. And then Marvel back in 1960 released a bunch of these little mini comics, and they're supposedly super hard to find. They're pretty rare. And this gentleman, Mark Evanier, wrote about the history of them. He did the work, wrote a little history about them. So the first book in this series is the history of these mini comics. And, he just talks about, how he's collected his set as a kid growing up in the 60s. And then what's interesting is this is the actual size. So that's how big these pages were. Imagine like a little postage size comic book, right? So it's a collection of the 6 of the books, all done neatly here. And then nice little history of it as well. So I've read this entire thing. I'm going to count this as one book because these are really small. And I got in a set. And I think if you look on Amazon right now, this Marvel comic mini book series, I got it on sale for $11, which is a bargain. I think the list price was $30. And, I read his blog, and on his blog the other night, I always read it right before I go to bed. And late the other night, he's like, "Hey, my book is on sale for some reason. Go check it out on Amazon or whatever." And I went there. It was like $11, $30 list price. I was like, "Okay, that's over half off. You got me." So it's a nicely bound collection. It's light reading. Obviously these comics are not gonna be, the most hardcore. I mean, here's Captain America. It's basically like an introduction to the characters and stuff like. And again, the art, this is what it looked like in the postage stamp. So, today that name is feared, yet feared by enemies of justice with good reason. And there's Captain America. So, I mean, don't expect like, some big, awesome series of books. But just from a collector's standpoint, it's sort of neat that they were able to reproduce these. And then I like reading about the history of them as well, the history of these books. I think it's really, really neat how he's been able to track down all his copies and learning about the history behind them, the artists and writers, and basically a lot of the history's been lost over the years. So he knows there's some of it that's definitive, but then some it's sort of been lost to the passage with the passage of time. So check the comments real quick. 26 is a great goal. Maybe I'll shoot for that this year. I have a lot of long commute. Oh, a lot of audiobooks. Nice. DJ Super Best Friend. Yeah, and that's the thing. Now that I've worked from home for a few years now, but I used to be able to get out, excuse me, go out and I would work at the local coffee shop, or for a while I had a co-working space that I rented out, but now I'm strictly at home. So I don't have those long commutes anymore. And I used to do the same thing. Audio books and podcasts were my jam. And now I find I don't do that as much now, primarily being at home. But what I am gonna do is focus on reading more books. So I've got 2 books today that I'm gonna read excerpts from. I'm gonna read the start of Light of the Jedi for y'all. Again, this is out today. It just came out today. You can go to Del Rey Books or your Amazon or whatever, find it there. And then we started a couple of weeks ago Star Wars Thrawn. This is one of my favorite Star Wars books. It is canon. This is the one. So Thrawn was originally part of the I always forget the name of the series, not Last Command. The one by Timothy Zahn. There was 3 books in the 90s that introduced the character Thrawn. Oh, gosh, I need to write this stuff down. But anyways, this is canon. This is from the re-release after Lucasfilm or Disney bought Lucasfilm. So we read chapter 1 the other day. I'm going to read chapter 2. This is going to be a regular thing here. I'm trying to find a day and time that works right for me. I believe this may be at Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. More games, please. Thanks for joining us, Ross. I used to walk a couple of miles to work each day, and I was all about yeah, right? And when we were out, we have a local trail near us too. Michelle and I would, go out there and walk and or run, and we would have the earbuds in, and she would listen to music, I'd listen to podcasts, or sometimes we'd do the same, do podcasts or music or whatever. But yeah, so now that I'm mainly at home, my podcast listening has definitely dropped a bunch, but reading I want to get back into. So I picked 26 because I was doing that for a couple of years on Goodreads. I have not hit that goal the last couple of years, but I think this year I've got a good shot because 26 for me, the number is 1 book every 2 weeks, and I think I can do that. I've got one down. Again, I'm counting this set of Marvel Comics mini books with the history. I'm counting that as my first book. Jake Michaels. Hi, Jake. Thanks for joining us. The Hand of Thrawn. No, it was called... So it was, it was The Last Command. I always remember The Last Command. That's the 3rd of the trilogy by Timothy Zahn. And that introduced the character Thrawn. That series of books, that trilogy, Heir to the Empire. Thank you, Jake. Yes, there's a man much smarter than I am, folks. Heir of the Empire. Not yet again. Thank you for joining us. Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I've got tea. Hope you all settle back and just enjoy. Do what you got to do. I'm going to be reading Light of the Jedi from Del Rey Books that just came out today. I've got my tea. I've got my water. And hey, I've got this cool thing. I did this late last night. I was probably up a little too late for myself last night. But if I'm going to use the Force and get to the next scene here. How do I do this? Oh, this one. Whoop. Yeah, there it is. So this is my reading screen here. This is Star Wars, The High Republic, Light of the Jedi. Thank you again for joining us, joining me, friends. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day. Relax, enjoy, put on the earbuds, enjoy. I'm going to read the first chapter of this new book from Del Rey Books, Star Wars, The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, by Charles Soule. Again, this whole world now, the High Republic, takes place before Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Yeah, I don't know if y'all can see that. They have the timeline there on the first page of everything that's canon right now as far as the novels go. So here we go. Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars, The High Republic, Light of the Jedi. The Force is with the galaxy. It is the time of the High Republic, a peaceful union of like-minded worlds where all voices are heard and governance is achieved through consensus, not coercion or fear. It is an era of ambition, of culture, of inclusion, of great works. Visionary Chancellor Lina So leads the Republic from the elegant city world of Coruscant, located near the bright center of the galactic core. But beyond the core and its many peaceful colonies, there is the Rim, inner, mid, and finally at the border of what is known, the Outer Rim. These worlds are filled with opportunity for those brave enough to travel the few well-mapped hyperspace lanes leading to them, though there is danger as well. The Outer Rim is a haven for anyone seeking to escape the laws of the Republic and is filled with predators of every type. Chancellor So is pledged to bring the Outer Rim worlds into the embrace of the Republic through ambitious outreach programs such as the Starlight Beacon. But until it is brought online, order and justice are maintained on the galactic frontier by Jedi Knights, guardians of peace who have mastered incredible abilities stemming from a mysterious energy field known as the Force. The Jedi work closely with the Republic and have agreed to establish outposts in the Outer Rim to help any who might require aid. The Jedi of the frontier can be the only resource for people with nowhere else to turn. Though the outposts operate independently and without direct assistance from the great Jedi temple on Coruscant, they act as an effective deterrent to those who would do evil in the dark. Few can stand against the Knights of the Jedi Order, but there are always those who will try. Bum, bum, bum. So, Part 1, The Great Disaster. Chapter 1, Hyperspace, The Legacy Run, 3 hours to impact. All is well. Captain Haida Cassett reviewed the readouts and displays built into her command chair for the second time. She always went over them at least twice. She had more than 4 decades of flying behind her, and figured the double check was a large part of the reason she'd survived all that time. The second look confirmed everything she'd seen in the first. All is well, she said out loud this time, announcing it to her bridge crew. Time for my rounds. Lieutenant Bowman, you have the bridge. Acknowledge, Captain, her first officer replied, standing from his own seat in preparation to occupy hers until she returned from her evening constitutional. Not every long-haul freighter captain ran their ship like a military vessel. Haida's had seen starships with stained floors and leaking pipes and cracks in their cockpit viewports, lapses that speared her to her very soul. But Haida Cassett began her career as a fighter pilot with the Malastare Solast Joint Task Force, keeping order in their little sector on the border of the mid-rim. She'd started flying out in Incom Z-24, the single-seat fighter everyone just called a buzzbug. Mostly security missions, hunting down pirates and the like. Eventually, though, she rose to command a heavy cruiser, one of the largest vessels in the fleet. A good career, doing good work. She'd left Mollis JTF with distinction and moved on to a job captaining merchant vessels for the Buying Guild, her version of a relaxed retirement. But 30-plus years in the military meant order and discipline weren't just in her blood, they were her blood. So every ship she flew now was run like it was about to fight a decisive battle against a Hutt armada, even if it was just carrying a load of Orgut hides from World A to World B. This ship, the Legacy Run, was no exception. Haida stood, accepting and returning Lieutenant Jerry Bowman's snapped salute. She stretched, feeling the bones of her spine crackle and crunch. Too many years on patrol in tiny cockpits, too many high-G maneuvers, sometimes in combat, sometimes just because it made her feel alive. The real problem, though, she thought, tucking a stray strand of gray hair behind one ear, is too many years. She left the bridge, departing the precise machine of her command deck and walking along a compact corridor into the larger, more chaotic world of the Legacy Run. The ship was a Kniff Yards Class A modular freight transport, more than twice as old as Haida herself. That put the craft a bit past her ideal operational life, but well within safe parameters if she was well maintained and regularly serviced, which she was. Her captain saw to that. The Run was a mixed-use ship, rated for both cargo and passengers, hence modular in its designation. Most of the vessel's structure was taken up by a single gigantic compartment, shaped like a long triangular prism, with engineering aft, the bridge fore, and the rest of the space allotted for cargo. Hollow boom arms protruded from the central spine at regular intervals, to which additional smaller modules could be attached. The ship could hold up to 144 of those, each customizable to handle every kind of cargo the galaxy had to offer. Time for a tea break, folks. And a little water to stay hydrated. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you again for joining me. My name is Ruel Gaviola. We are reading Star Wars The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, out now from Del Rey Books. Let's get back to it. This is Chapter 1. Haida liked that the ship could haul just about anything, It meant you never knew what you were going to get, what weird challenges you might face from one job to the next. She had flown the ship once when half the cargo space in the primary compartment was reconfigured into a huge water tank to carry a gigantic saberfish from the storm seas on Tiburon to the private aquarium of a countess on Abregode Ray. Haida and her crew had gotten the beast there safely. Not an easy gig. Even harder, though, was getting the creature back to Tiburon 3 cycles later, when the blasted thing got sick because the Countess's people had no idea how to take care of it. She gave the woman credit, though. She paid full freight to send the saberfish home. A lot of people, nobles especially, would have just let it die. This particular trip, in comparison, was as simple as they came. The Legacy Run's cargo sections were about 80% filled with settlers heading to the outer rim from overpopulated core and colony worlds, seeking new lives, new opportunities, new skies. She could relate to that. Haida Cassett had been restless all her life. She had a feeling she'd die that way too, looking out a viewport, hoping her eyes would land on something she'd never seen before. Because this was a transport run, most of the ship's modules were basic passenger configurations, with open seating that converted into beds that were, in theory, comfortable enough to sleep in. Sanitary facilities, storage, a few holoscreens, small galleys, and that was it. For settlers willing to pay for the increased comfort and convenience, some had droid-operated auto-canteens and private sleeping compartments, but not many. These people were frugal. If they'd had credits to begin with, they probably wouldn't be heading to the Outer Rim to scrape out a future. The dark edge of the galaxy was a place of challenges both exciting and deadly. More deadly than exciting, in truth. Even the road to get out there is tricky, Haida thought, her gaze drawn by the swirl of hyperspace outside the large porthole she happened to be passing. She snapped her eyes away, knowing she could end up standing there for 20 minutes if she let herself get sucked in. You couldn't trust hyperspace. It was useful, sure, if it got you from here to there. It was the key to the expansion of the Republic out from the core, but no one really understood it. If your Navidroid miscalculated the coordinates, even a little, you could end up off the marked route, the main road through whatever hyperspace actually was, and then you'd be on a dark path leading to who knew where. It happened even in the well-traveled hyperlanes near the galactic center, and out here, where the prosecutors had barely mapped out any routes, well, you had to watch yourself. She put her concerns out of her mind and continued on her way. The truth was, the Legacy Run was currently speeding along the best-traveled, best-known route. There's that word, route. I gotta stick with one of them. We're going with route, folks. She put her concerns out of her mind and continued on her way. The truth was, the Legacy Run was currently speeding along the best-traveled, best-known route to the Outer Rim worlds. Ships moved through this hyperlane constantly in both directions. Nothing to worry about. But then, more than 9,000 souls aboard the ship were depending on Captain Haida Cassett to get them safely to their destination. She worried. It was her job. Haida exited the corridor and entered the central hall, emerging in a large circular space, an open spot necessitated by the ship's structure that had been repurposed as a sort of unofficial common area. A group of children kicked a ball around as adults stood by and chatted nearby, all just enjoying a little break from the cramped confines of the modules where they spent most of their time. The space wasn't fancy, just a bare junction spot where several short corridors met, but it was clean. The ship employed, at its captain's insistence, an automated maintenance crew that kept its interiors neat and sanitary. One of the custodial droids was spidering its way along a wall at that very moment, performing one of the endless tasks required on a ship the size of the Run. She took a moment to take stock of this group, 20 people or so, all ages, from a number of worlds. Humans, of course, but also a few four-armed, fur-covered Ardanians, a family of Given with their distinctive triangular eyes, and even a Lanik with its pinched face, top knot, and huge pointing ears protruding from the side of its head. You didn't see many of those around. But no matter their planet of origin, they were all just ordinary beings, biding time until their new lives could begin. One of the kids looked up. "Captain Cassett," the boy said, a human, olive-skinned with red hair. She knew him. "Hello, Serge," Haida said. "What's the good word? Everything all right here?" The other children stopped their game and clustered around her. Could use some new hollows, Serge said. We've watched everything in the system. All we got is all we got, Hada replied. And stop trying to slice into the archive to see the age-restricted titles. You think I don't know? This is my ship. I know everything that happens on the Legacy run. She leaned forward. Everything. Serge blushed and looked towards his friends, who had also suddenly found very interesting things to look at on the absolute uninteresting floor, ceiling, and walls of the chamber. Don't worry about it, she said, straightening. I get it. This is a pretty boring ride. You won't believe me, but in not too long, when your parents have you plowing fields or building fences or fighting off rancors, you'll be dreaming of the time you spent on this ship. Just relax and enjoy. Serge rolled his eyes and returned to whatever improvised ball game he and the other kids had devised. Hada grinned and moved through the room, nodding and chatting as she went. People. Probably some bad. Probably some good, some bad. But for the next few days, her people. She loved these runs. No matter what eventually happened in the lives of these folks, they were heading to the rim to make their dreams come true. She was part of that, and it made her feel good. Chancellor So's republic wasn't perfect. No government was or ever could be. But it was a system that gave people room to dream. No, even better. It encouraged dreams, big and small. The Republic had its flaws, but really, things could be a hell of a lot worse. Hada's rounds took over an hour. She made her way through the passenger compartments, but also checked on a shipment of super-cooled liquid Tabana to make sure the volatile stuff was properly locked down. It was. Inspected the engines, all good. Investigated the status of repairs to the ship's environmental recirculation systems, in progress and proceeding nicely. And made sure fuel reserves were still more than adequate for the rest of the journey, with a comfortable margin besides. They were. The Legacy run was exactly as she wanted it to be. A tiny, well-maintained world in the wilderness, a warm bubble of safety holding back the void. She couldn't vouch for what was happening for these settlers once they dispersed into the outer rim, but she would make sure they got there safe and sound to find out. Hada returned to the bridge, where Lieutenant Bowman all but leapt to his feet the moment he saw her. Captain on the bridge, he said, and the other officers sat up straighter. Thank you, Jerry, Hada said as her second stepped aside and returned to his post. Hada settled into her command chair, automatically checking the displays, scanning for anything out of the ordinary. All is well, she thought. Ka-tang, 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 ka-tang. An alarm, loud and insistent. The bridge lighting flipped into emergency configuration, bathing everything in red. Through the front viewport, the swirls of hyperspace looked off, somehow. Maybe it was the emergency lighting, but they had a reddish tinge. They looked sickly. Hada felt her pulse quicken. Her mind snapped into combat mode without thinking. Report! She barked out, her eyes whipping along her own set of screens to find the source of the alarm. Alarm generated by the Navicomp captain, called out her navigator Cadet Kalwar, a young Quimerian. There's something in hyperlane. Dead ahead. Big. Impact in 10 seconds. The cadet's voice held steady, and Hada was proud of him. He probably wasn't that much older than Serge. She knew this situation was impossible. The hyperlanes were empty. That was the whole point. She couldn't rattle off all the science involved, but she did know that light-speed collisions in established lanes simply could not happen. It was mathematically absurd to hear the engineers talk about it. Hada had been flying in deep space long enough to know that impossible things happen all the time, every damn day. She also knew that 10 seconds was no time at all at speeds like the Legacy run was traveling. You can't trust hyperspace, she thought. Hada Cassett tapped 2 buttons on her command console. Brace yourselves, she said, her voice calm. I'm taking control. 2 piloting sticks snapped up from the armrests of her captain's chair. Hada grasped them, one in each hand. She spared the time for one breath, and then she flew. The Legacy 1 was not an Incom Z-24 Buzzbug, or even one of the new Republic Longbeams. It had been in service for well over a century. It was a freighter at the end of, if not beyond, its operational lifespan, loaded to capacity with engines designed for slow, gradual acceleration and deceleration, and docking with spaceports and orbital loading facilities. It maneuvered like a moon. The Legacy Run was no warship, not even close. But Haida flew it like one. She saw the obstacle in their path with her fighter pilot's eye and instincts, saw it advancing at incredible velocity, large enough that both her ship and whatever the thing was would be disintegrated into atoms, just dust drifting forever through the hyperlanes. There was no time to avoid it. The ship could not make the turn. There was no room. There was no time. But Captain Haida Cassett was at the helm, and she would not fail her ship. The tiniest tweak of the left control stick and a larger rotation of the right, and the Legacy Run moved. More than it wanted to, but not less than its captain believed it could. The huge freighter slipped past the obstacle in their path, the thing shooting by their hull so close Haida was sure she felt it ruffle her hair, despite many layers of metal and shielding between them. But they were alive. No impact. The ship was alive. Turbulence, and Haida fought it, feeling her way through the jagged bumps and ripples, closing her eyes, not needing to see to fly. The ship groaned, its frame complaining. "You can do it, old gal," she said out loud. "We're a couple of cranky old ladies, and that's for sure, but we've got a lot of life to live. I've taken damn good care of you, and you know it. I won't let you down if you won't let me down." Haida did not fail her ship. It failed her. The groan of overstressed metal became a scream. The vibrations of the ship's passage through space took on a new timbre Haida had felt too many times before. It was the feeling of a ship that had moved beyond its limits, whether from taking too much damage in a firefight or, as here, just being asked to perform a maneuver that was more than it could give. The Legacy Run was tearing itself apart. At most, it had seconds left. Haida opened her eyes. She released the control sticks and tapped out commands on her console, activating the bulkhead shielding that separated each cargo module in the instance of a disaster, thinking that perhaps it might give some of the people aboard a chance. She thought about Serge and his friends playing in the common area, and how emergency doors had just slammed down at the entrance to each passenger module, possibly trapping them in a zone that was about to become vacuum. She hoped the children had gone to their families when the alarm sounded. She didn't know. She just didn't know. Haida locked eyes with her first officer, who was staring at her, knowing what was about to happen. He saluted. "Captain," Lieutenant Bowman said, "it's been the bridge ripped open." Haida Cassett died, not knowing if she had saved anyone at all. And friends, that is chapter 1 of Star Wars: The High Republic. What an opening, right? That was, wow. Just like that, we lost our first character in the book within the first 15 pages. Spoiler alert. That was that. Captain Haga. Yeah, crazy. Hopefully she's, spared the lives. And yeah, that was right, Amanda Penn. That was totally unexpected. There goes that character. Wow, what an opening, folks. That was, I am intrigued, to say the least. And now I'm just going to read chapter 1 today, but I'm going to continue this on my own. Again, this is now available, friends, online, and hopefully you still have a bookstore in your neighborhood, at your local friendly bookstore. Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. It is now available from Del Rey Books and also your online retailers. Yeah, that was sort of unexpected, right, Panda? I was like, oh, wow, she died. That was it. Friends, we are just hanging out doing reads. I want to welcome you. My name is Ruel Gaviola, and I read every now and then here on my Twitch channel. I mainly stream board games live with friends and or family. I love analog board games. That's primarily what I do here. Sometimes we'll play video games or video or digital implementations of board games. But every now and then I like to change it up, and whether it's reading or sometimes Michelle and I, my wife and I, will try snacks. We're on a mission to find the ultimate game night snack, and we do a thing called Meeple Munchies, where we just get a bunch of random snacks from the store and sample them. Michelle's also subscribed to Universal Yums, a monthly snack box. So every month she gets a snack box, and we started streaming that live here. We'll just open up the box on live and try the snacks and critique them as we go. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm a Star Wars geek through and through. As you can tell, I got my shirt and got my Chewie Squishable thanks to Amanda Panda, and I'm also reading Star Wars Thrawn. This is going to be, we read chapter 1 a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to get back on this reading kick, folks. So once a week, I'll be reading one chapter from Star Wars Thrawn, along with anything else that I pick up along the way. Just as a part of, my Goodreads challenge to read 26 books this year. Hopefully you're reading more this year as well. I'm hydrated. I've got my tea. I'm going to read Star Wars Thrawn. Again, this is a instant classic for me from Timothy Zahn. One of my all-time favorite characters of Star Wars. Thrawn has been on, I think it was Rebels and or Clone Wars animated series. I'm gotta admit, as much of a Star Wars fan I am, I'm of the generation that loves the original trilogy, and slowly but surely I'm coming around to everything else. I do love The Mandalorian. I think The Mandalorian is one of the greatest things in the Star Wars universe ever released. Not a fan of the prequels. If I had to pick my favorite of the prequels, it'd be Revenge of the Sith. I'm not a fan of the first and second ones. The second trilogy, the latest one, was a mixed bag. As much as I enjoyed The Force Awakens, it was pretty much a rehash of New Hope. This is the hill that I die on. I thought The Last Jedi was fantastic. I thought Rian Johnson took a lot of chances, and I thought the series needed it. Then that's what I wanted for the second trilogy. And again, everyone has what they want in Star Wars, and what we got was a mixed bag. The last trilogy, or The Last Jedi, and then we got Rise of Skywalker. I've seen it 3 times. I liked it the first time, didn't love it as much as everyone else. I like it less and less the more I watch it. I thought the pacing was off in that movie, and the whole retconning that J.J. Abrams did, I thought was bad. But again, I cannot, whatever brings you into the Star Wars universe, I'm okay with it. I tried to get my nieces and nephews into Star Wars by doing the way I was introduced to it, by starting with Star Wars, which is now called Episode 4, going 4, 5, 6, and as kids, they weren't really into it. I was like, oh, bummer. But they got into Star Wars through Star Wars Legos, the Star Wars Lego movies and stuff, and that wasn't my jam, but I'm like, hey, now we can talk about Chewie and everyone else, and that's how they got into it. I'm perfectly fine. I took my niece, when The Rise of Skywalker came out, I took my niece, and it was such a thrill for me, to take that next generation, right, to go see Rise of Skywalker. We got to see it one day early thanks to my local comic book store. They used to do, it was the last one they did, but they were doing private screenings where it was like 24 hours before the official release date. And it was such a treat to take her, and she loved it, and even though I wasn't as enthralled with Rise of Skywalker, the fact that she was sitting there, we're watching this, and we're rooting for Rey and rooting for Finn and everyone else, that meant the world to me. So no matter how you come into Star Wars, whatever's your jam is your jam. Collecting Camel, thanks for joining us, friend. Much appreciated. I don't think Episode 1 has some of the best things in Star Wars, even if the movie as a whole. Yeah, I didn't like Episode 1 at all. Just straight up, I didn't like it. I thought it was, it just wasn't my thing. Or it does have some of the best things I meant. Oh, okay. DJ Super Best Friend. Yeah, enjoyed Ryan's Risk. Very refreshing. Thank you, DJ Super Best Friend. And that's what we were talking about, Timothy Zahn. So the Thrawn character was originally introduced in the Heir of the Empire trilogy, released in the late 90s, I believe, or early 90s. And that took Luke, Han, and Leia. It was after Return of the Jedi, and that I felt like that trilogy of books would have been the perfect trilogy of movies that would have followed, the 6. Obviously, it couldn't happen because everyone had aged much more than the books were. But yeah, it was It was such a great trilogy series, but it was no longer canon. It's now in the Legends series of books. But we did get this book, which is fantastic. This is how they reintroduced Thrawn into the canon. Collected Camel, Pod Racing, Darth Maul, Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon. Yeah, Darth Maul is great. I love Liam Neeson. I cannot not love Liam Neeson. But I mean, come on, no disrespect, but Jake Lloyd, ugh, cringeworthy, and Jar Jar. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. We would have gotten Mary Jane. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Eclectic Camel. You are a more knowledgeable fan than I am. But yeah, anyways, I love Star Wars through and through, and whatever gets you into the universe, more power to you. We all have our opinions, and I'm going to read. I'm thankful to be reading, and thank you for joining us, friends. I'll be reading Chapter 2 of Star Wars Thrawn. We read Chapter 1 a couple of weeks ago. I will be continuing this in the weeks to come here. I want to do things outside of board games as well, and this is one of them. So, again, thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a great day. Please grab a tea, grab a coffee, or, hey, if you got to, grab your adult beverage of choice wherever you are. And thanks for joining me. I'm going to go back to the reading screen. Whoop! There it is. And let's get going here, folks. Chapter 2, Star Wars Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. Chapter 2. A life path may change because of important decisions or events. Those were what drove my current path. But sometimes the smallest event can also drive a turn. In the case of Eli Vanto, that force was a single overheard word. Chiss. Where had Cadet Vanto heard that name? What did it mean to him? He had already spoken one reason, but there might well be others. Indeed, the full truth might have several layers, but what were they? On a ship as large as this, there was only one practical way to find out. Thus did my path take yet another turn, as certainly did his. Thrawn, Park repeated, as if trying out the name. Very well. As I said, welcome. I want you to know that we didn't intend to intrude on your privacy. We were looking for smugglers, and it happened upon your home. Excuse me. One of our standing orders is to study all unknown species we come across. Yes, Thrawn said to Sai Bisti. So also said the traders who first contacted my people. He understands, sir, Eli translated. He knows about that order from traders who've contacted his people. Then why didn't you come out then? Barriss demanded. Why did you harass and kill my men? It was necessary, Thrawn began in Sai Bisti. Enough, Barriss cut in. He understands basic. That means he can speak it. So speak. Why did you harass and kill my men? For a moment, Thrawn gazed thoughtfully at him. Eli looked at Park, but the captain also remained silent. Very well, Thrawn said in basic. The words were heavily accented, but understandable. It was necessary. Why? Park asked. What did you hope to accomplish here? I hope to return home. You were shipwrecked? I was, he looked at Eli. Zishu Aswani. Eli blinked. He says he was exiled, he told the others. The words seemed to hang in the fume-scented air of the hangar bay. Eli stared at Thrawn, thinking back to the campfire stories of his childhood. The tales had spoken of Chiss unity and military prowess. Never once had the stories talked about them exiling one another. Why? Park asked. Thrawn looked at Eli. In basic, if you can, Eli said. The Chiss looked back at Park. The leaders and I disagreed. Disagreed to the point of exile? Yes. Interesting, Park murmured. All right, so that's why you ran Colonel Barriss's men in circles. Now tell us how. It was undifficult, Thrawn said. Your spacecraft crashed near my place of exile. I had opportunity to examine before following soldiers arrived. The pilot was dead. I took his body and hid it away. And filled his flight suit with grass, Barriss put in, hoping we wouldn't notice you'd stolen his equipment. Nor did you, the Chiss said. Important most was that you would take the flight suit and rotted pioche berries with you. The berries? Barriss echoed. Yes. Rotted, crushed push berries are lure for small animals of night. Eli nodded to himself. Rotted, fermented. Animals of night, nocturnal. It was as if Thrawn had had a fairly good basic dictionary to work with, but was missing some of the more technical words and had to improvise. His grammar was a bit shaky too, again suggesting that he'd learned it out of books instead of from practical conversational experience. Did that imply the Chiss had only limited recent contact with anyone outside unknown space? So you strapped the gimmicked blaster power packs to the animals, Barris said. That's how you got them past our sentry perimeter. Yes, the Chiss said. Also, how I later attacked soldiers. With a sling, I threw more berries to their armor. You then crashed a starfighter, Park said. How? I knew spacecraft would come to search. In preparation, I had strung some... He paused. Ohoduu? Monofilament line, Eli supplied. Monofilament line between treetops. The spacecraft struck. And at that altitude, the pilot wouldn't have had time to recover, Park said, nodding. It wouldn't have done you any good to capture the fighter intact, by the way. They don't have hyperdrives. I did not want the spacecraft, Thrawn said. I wanted the pilots, again a pause, Izenti Upu Osenji. Equipment and comlink, Eli said. But you didn't take his comlink, Barris objected. We checked the suit at the encampment. It was still there. No, Thrawn said. What was there was the comlink from the first pilot. Eli nodded to himself. Cleverness, tactics, and maintaining control of the situation. Those were indeed the hallmarks of the Chiss, at least according to the stories. But still, exile? Ingenious, Park said, and we thought we knew what had happened, so we never bothered to check the serial number. So when we discovered the first comlink was missing and locked it out of the circuit, you still had one that functioned. So you killed a man just to get his comlink, Barris said harshly. Clearly, he wasn't as impressed by the alien's resourcefulness as the captain. Why did you keep attacking my men? For the fun of it? I regret the loss of life, Thrawn said gravely, but I needed soldiers with fuller armor to come. With fuller, Barris broke off. The stormtroopers? You wanted stormtroopers to come? Your soldiers wear helmets, the Chiss said, tracing an imaginary brim around his forehead. No good for me. He touched a hand to his face. I needed cover of face. The only way you could enter the encampment undetected, Park said, nodding. Yes, Thrawn agreed. I used explosive on one to obtain armor I could study. How did you do that without anyone hearing the explosion? Barris interrupted. It was as I began feedback noise from comlink, the Chiss said. The noise enclosed the noise of the explosive. From the armor, I learned how to kill the soldier without noise or observable damage. I took a second soldier and his armor and walked to the ship. While we were moving your equipment inside, Barris asked. I selected a moment when no one was inside, Thrawn said. With small branches, I stood the armor upright and set it outside the doorway. An explosive inside destroyed it. A distraction so that we wouldn't realize there were actually two missing stormtroopers, Park said. Where did you hide during the trip up? Inside the second power generator casing, Thrawn told him. It is nearly empty as I've used its parts to maintain the first. I gather you've been here for quite a while, Park said. I can see why you wanted so desperately to leave. Thrawn drew himself up. I was not desperate, but my people needed me. Why? They are in danger. There are many dangers in the galaxy. Dangers to my people, dangers to yours. He made an odd gesture. You would do well to learn of them. Yet your people exiled you here, Park pointed out. Do they disagree with you as to the magnitude of these threats? Thrawn looked at Eli. Repeat? He asked in Cybisti. Eli translated the captain's question. We do not disagree on threat, Thrawn answered in his accented basic. We disagree on process. They do not accept belief in Iziboli Hasulu. Eli swallowed hard. They don't believe in preemptive strikes. So your people need protection, Park said, his voice subtly changed. How would you do this, alone and without ships or allies? Eli frowned. An odd question in an odd tone of voice. Was the captain fishing for information on possible Chiss allies? Thrawn didn't seem to notice. I do not know, he said calmly. I will find a way. I'm sure you will, Parks said. In the meantime, you've had a busy day, and I'm sure you could use some rest. Commander? Sir? One of the stormtroopers stepped forward. You and your squad will escort our guests to the deck officer's office while suitable accommodations and refreshments are prepared, Park ordered. Thrawn, I take my leave now. We shall speak again later. Thank you, Captain Park, the Chiss said. I will look ahead to it. Eli was in his quarters working on the after-action report he'd been ordered to complete when they came for him. Eli had never been in the captain's private office. He'd never even been in this part of the strikefast. And he'd never been in the company of this many high-ranking officers. It was like a board certification session or a court-martial. Cadet Vanto, Captain Park greeted him. He gestured to a chair that had been set in front of the line of officers. Be seated. Yes, sir. Eli sat down, fervently hoping that his shaking wasn't visible. First, I want to commend you for your conduct during the recent action, Park said. You behaved admirably under fire. Thank you, sir, Eli said, though as he remembered it, he'd done very little except stay as clear as the fighting and confusion as he possibly could. Tell me, what do you think of our prisoner? He seems very confident, sir, Eli said. Why were they asking him? Very much in control, he considered. Except maybe when he was captured in the hangar bay. You may have caught him by surprise there. I don't think so, Park said. He surrendered quite readily, with no attempt at resistance or escape. He cocked his head slightly. You seem to know something about his people. Not really, sir, Eli said. We have stories about the Chiss, more like myths, really, that have been passed down through the generations. As far as I know, none of them had been seen on Lasatra or anywhere in the area for hundreds of years. But you do at least have myths, which is more than we have in the Strikefast records, Park said. What do these stories say about them? They're supposed to be great warriors, Eli said. Clever, resourceful, proud. Intensely loyal to one another, too. This exile, they must really hate the idea of preemptive strikes to do that to him. So it would appear, Park agreed. I see you're on track at Myanmar to become a supply officer. Yes, sir, Eli said, the change in subject momentarily throwing him off balance. My family is in the shipping business, and they thought Imperial service would be a step up. Have you ever had any training in teaching or tutoring? Nothing formal, sir, Eli said. Was Park going to recommend the switch to a teaching track? He hoped not. He'd spent his youth flying cargoes for his family, and he didn't want to be stuck in an office or classroom somewhere. For a moment, the captain gazed at him. Then he leaned back in his seat and looked at the other officers flanking him. A wordless signal passed among them. Very well, Cadet, Park said, turning back to Eli. As of this moment, you're assigned as a liaison, translator, and aide to our prisoner. You will also... Sir? Eli blurted out, feeling his eyes go wide. But I'm just a cadet. I wasn't finished, Park said. Along with translation, you'll also be coaching him in basic. He has the fundamentals, as you saw, but he needs a more extensive vocabulary and some correction with pronunciation and grammar. Any questions? No, sir, Eli managed. The surprises were coming way too fast. Actually, yes, sir, I do. Why does he need to know basic? Aren't we putting him back on the planet? There was a quiet stir among the officers, and Eli had the sudden sense that he'd just crossed an invisible line. He tensed. No, Park said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, as if this was a question he and the others had already hashed over, and hadn't necessarily agreed on. We're taking him to Coruscant. Eli clamped his mouth shut, visions of ancient kings parading defeated enemies through the streets flashing through his mind. But surely that wasn't what Park had in mind, was it? I believe the Emperor will be interested in meeting him and learning about these Chiss, Park said. There was something in his tone that suggested the explanation was as much for his officers' benefits as for Eli's. I also believe that they could prove an important asset to the Empire. Do your myths include any suggestion of where their home planet might be located? Just that they come from the unknown region, sir. Nothing more specific. Pity, Park said. No matter. That will be another of your duties over the next few days. to learn as much as you can about him, his homeworld, and his people. Yes, sir, Eli said, feeling his heart doing bounce-ups. From lowly cadet to translator and tutor to a being straight out of Lysostra's stories. And the only downside was what it might cost his future. Because he'd already seen that the Empire was a massive construct of giant, unforgiving machinery. If he strayed even a few degrees off his chosen career path, he might suddenly find himself relegated to some other trek, something obscure that might send him to the core deck of a forgotten starbase and abandon him there. Still, this little detour in his path should only fill a week or so while the Strikefast transported Thrawn to Coruscant. After that, Eli would return to Myanmar with the other cadets, and with a story he'd be able to tell people for the rest of his life. And really, what could go wrong? Panda Angel has redeemed 100 hydrate points. Thank you, Panda. I was just about to hydrate. You read my mind. Thank you. Hope you all are enjoying Thrawn so far. Ah, the tea hits the spot. We're about halfway through chapter 2 here. Got a few more pages. Yeah. So thanks again for hanging out, folks, wherever you are. Appreciate it. May the Force be with you today. I've read part of Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, and hey, I forgot to change the cover here. We are now reading Thrawn from Timothy Zahn. This is a classic. Well, I consider a classic in the Star Wars canon of literature. So appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I love Star Wars. I love the books, love the movies, graphic novels, and so forth. As you can see, I've got the backgrounds there. These are compliments of the StarWars.com website. They have these backgrounds. You can use these for Zoom calls, Skype calls as backgrounds. I just put them all together into a little collage here, a slideshow. Just give it a little Star Wars flavor, get you in the little mood here. So again, thank you for joining me. Let's get back to Star Wars Thrawn in just a second here. You seem amused, Cadet Vanto said. He leans back in his seat. Amused? Thrawn asked. Entertained with a feeling of humor, Vanto said. He switches back to Cybisti for the explanation. Was there anything in particular about the story that you found humorous? I found the story quite interesting. Some of my stories you find interesting, Vanto said. Wrinkles form across his forehead. Others you seem to find unbelievable. A few of them you find amusing. This was one of those. I do not mean to offend, Thrawn said. But I myself am Chiss, and never have I heard of any of my people wielding such a power. I'll concede that one, Vanto said, the wrinkles partially smooth out. I told you right from the beginning that these stories are barely above the level of myths, but you asked to hear them. I appreciate your willingness to share, Thrawn said. One may learn a great deal about a people by the stories they tell of others. And, Vanto asked, the wrinkles returned, his head turned slightly to his right. I do not understand. I asked what you learn about humans, Vanto said, his eyes narrow slightly. I misspoke. Apologies. I mean to say I could learn about one person, you, from the stories you choose to tell. And what have you learned about me, Vanto asked. His eyes return to normal size, his vocal tone lowers in pitch. That you do not wish to be here, Thrawn said. You do not wish to act as a translator or assistant. You certainly do not wish to act as interrogator. Who said I was an interrogator? Vanto asked. His tone rises slightly in pitch and volume. The musculature beneath his sleeves tightens. You wish to return to your numbers and inventory lists, Thrawn said. That is where your talents lie, and where you desire your path to lead. Fascinating, Vanto said. His tone takes on a new, rumbling texture. The corners of his lips tighten briefly. I suppose that as a big, important military commander, you find logistics and supply beneath your dignity? Do you? Of course not, Vanto said. His torso stretches slightly upward in his chair. His voice takes on a fuller tone. Because I know better. My family has done that kind of work for 3 generations. I'm just doing it for the Imperial Navy now instead of for my own family, that's all. I presume you were good at it. I'm very good at it, Vanto said. Lieutenant Austerity told me I'm one of the best cadets he's ever had aboard. As soon as I finish my last term at the Academy, I'll be guaranteed an assignment aboard a ship of the line. Is that what you wish? Thrawn asked. Absolutely, Vanto said. The fuller tone partially fades from his voice. What I don't know is why you care. Why you care about what? Why you care about me, Vanto said. His eyes narrow again. His tone returns to the lower pitch. You've been studying me. Don't think I haven't noticed. You asked me to tell you about one of the legends I learned as a child. Then you asked about my home or background or childhood. Always small questions, always delivered very casually. What I want to know is why. He folds his arm in a crisscross pattern across his chest. I am sorry, Thrawn said. I meant no harm. I was merely interested in you, as I am interested in everything about your empire. But why me? Vanto asked. You never asked about Captain Park or Captain Barris or any of the other senior officers, or even about Emperor Palpatine or the Imperial Senate. They are not connected to my immediate survival, Thrawn said. You are. With all due respect, you couldn't be more wrong, Vanto said. He shakes his head back and forth sideways. Captain Park could order you shoved out an airlock at any time. Colonel Barris could trump up charges or implicate you in something and have you shot. As for the Emperor, the musculature of his throat tightens briefly. There is enhanced infrared glow from his face. He has absolute power over everything and everyone in the Empire. If he isn't amused or pleased with you, you'll end up dead. Captain Park seeks honor and promotion, Thrawn said. He believes me to be the path to that end. Colonel Barris dislikes me, but will not risk angering his captain. As for the Emperor, we shall see. Fine, Vanto said. The musculature of his throat relaxes partially, but not fully. Personally, I'd be a lot more concerned about him, but that's up to you. But I'm still the bottom man on the roster. Why do you even care about me? You are my translator. You hold my words in your hand and their meanings. A misjudged translation will confuse or anger. A deliberate error could lead to death. Cry spit, Vanto said. He makes a snorting sound through his nose. Forgive me? I call cry spit, Vanto said. You've picked up a lot of basic in the past couple of days. You speak it as well as I do. Probably better. You don't have a wild space accent people can make fun of. The last thing you need is a translator. You make my case for me, Thrawn said. What is meant by cry spit? It's a slang term for nonsense, Vanto said. The left corner of his lip twists upward. Especially nonsense that the speaker knows is nonsense. I see. Crite spit. I will remember that. Don't, Vanto said. His tone is deep, the words sharply clipped. It's not polite. It also reeks of backwater places like Lasatra. Backwater means any planet that's not part of the core worlds and the elite and powerful people who live there. I presume there exists a hierarchy of worlds and the people who inhabit them? Finally, a question about the actual empire, Vanto said. Yes, absolutely there's a hierarchy. A big, impressive, mostly unwritten, but absolutely rigid hierarchy. If you were counting on me to introduce you to the high and mighty, you're going to be seriously disappointed. You give yourself too little credit, Cadet Vanto, Thrawn said. Or perhaps you give the social hierarchy too much. I am content to have you as my translator. I'm glad you're pleased, Vanto said. His tone rises slightly in a pitch. His throat musculature still shows tightness. Not that you had any choice in the matter. Perhaps, Thrawn said. Tell me, when do we arrive at your capital world? My orders are to have you in the forward hangar bay, that's the one you tried to escape from, at 0700 tomorrow morning, Vanto said. And I will meet with the Emperor soon after that? I have no idea what happens after that, Vanto said. The muscles under his tunic stiffen slightly, and wrinkles return to his forehead. But odds are it won't be anyone even close to the Emperor. Probably some senior administrator, maybe even a junior one. Will you come with me? That's up to the captain, Vanto said. I do still have other duties aboard the Strikefast. I also need to prepare for my return to the Myanmar Academy. Your duties and studies are of course important, Thrawn said. We shall see what decision Captain Park comes to. Until morning, Cadet, I bid you farewell and good evening. Yes, Vanto said. The tension in his musculature decreases, but it is not entirely gone. Until morning. Captain Park's personal Lambda shuttle left the hangar at precisely 07:05 the next morning.
Apart from Park, Thrawn, and Eli, the passenger list included Colonel Barris, 3 of the Navy troopers who'd been on the planet when Thrawn was running everyone in circles, and 2 stormtroopers, presumably also part of the group who'd seen the alien in action. There were also 10 heavily armed Navy troopers. If Park was worried about hard-eyed high command administrators, he also wasn't taking any chances on his prisoner making a break for it once they reached the planet. Like everyone else in the Empire, Eli had seen hundreds of hollows of Coruscant. He'd also spent a couple of hours studying planetary maps the day after Park announced they were headed there. None of it prepared him for the breathtaking grandeur of the real thing. He gazed at the passenger cabin's repeater display, watching in utter fascination. The entire planet was surrounded by half a dozen rings of orbiting transports, passenger ships, and military vessels, each awaiting its turn to head to the surface. Elsewhere, steady streams of outgoing ships created subtle fountains of light as they joined the various exit corridors for passage through the atmosphere, then scattered in all directions once they reached space. As the Lambda continued inward, Eli watched the array of glittering star-like points that covered the planet slowly resolve into buildings and towers. Still closer, and the grid lines of repulsor-lift vehicles wove their packed way through between the towering buildings, doing their intricate dance as they headed for 1,000 destinations. A sobering thought occurred to him. Right now, he could probably see more vehicles than were on his entire home planet. The pilot eased them into one of the higher lanes, one that seemed reserved for military vehicles. They were close enough now that Eli could pick out specific landmarks. There was the Royal Imperial Academy, where the Empire's elite trained for the Army and Navy. Beyond it, and to the east, was one of the industrial areas, with tall towers spewing superheated wastewaters vapor high into the atmosphere. In the distance beyond that, he could see an open area that was far below the tops of the surrounding towers, yet still many levels above the actual planetary surface. A landing area, most likely, probably for elite politicians or larger military vessels. He spotted the top of the Imperial Senate building in the other direction. He caught his breath. If the Senate was there, and the Royal Academy back there, they weren't headed to either the Admiralty or the Imperial Security Bureau headquarters, which he'd concluded were the 2 most likely destinations. They were heading straight for the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace? No, that couldn't be. Not for a single random blue-skinned near-human captured on an unnamed world out in wild space. There was no possible way the Emperor would even notice such an event, let alone take a personal interest in it. And yet, that seemed to be exactly what had happened. Surreptitiously, Eli looked across the aisle, where Thrawn and Park sat together surrounded by guards. The captain looked unnaturally stiff, as if he couldn't believe their destination any more than Eli could. The guards looked the same way, except that some of them looked quietly but genuinely terrified. As well they should be. Those were the men and women whose mistakes had allowed Thrawn to get aboard the Strikefast in the first place. There were dark stories about what the Emperor did with people who'd failed him, but Thrawn himself didn't look frightened or even concerned. All Eli could see in his face was that maddening confidence of his. Maybe Park hadn't told him where they were going. Maybe he hadn't told him about the Emperor's history or his reputation. Or maybe he'd told Thrawn everything, and the Chiss simply assumed that whatever their destination, he would have things under control. Eli turned back to the display, the old stories of Chiss military power echoing through his mind. As far as he had been able to ascertain, that whole culture and society had been lost from Republic knowledge for centuries, maybe even millennia. Now suddenly, they had re-entered history. Was Thrawn's level of confidence unique to him? Or were all the Chiss like this? As someone who might someday be called upon to fight them, he hoped fervently it wasn't the latter. Eli had almost managed to convince himself that the group would merely be meeting with some palace official when they were ushered past a pair of red-robed and red-helmeted Imperial guards into the Emperor's throne room. Even more than Coruscant itself, the hollows and vids Eli had seen of Emperor Palpatine paled in comparison with the real thing. At first glance, the emperor didn't seem like much. He was dressed in a plain brown hooded robe, with no ornamentation or glitz of any sort. His throne, while massive, was solid black and very simple. Again, with no ostentation about it, raised a mere 4 steps above the floor. In fact, the darkness of his robe made him almost disappear from sight into the black of the throne. It was as the group drew closer that the eeriness began. First was the emperor's face. The hollows and vids always showed him as a dignified older man, aged somewhat with the experience of life and the cares of leadership. But the hollows were wrong. The face beneath the hood was old. Old and creased with 100 deep wrinkles. Not ordinary wrinkles either, the kind Eli's grandparents had earned from years under the open sky. These creases were less like age and more like scars or burn tissue. The history stated that the Jedi traitors' last attempt to seize power had been an attack on then Chancellor Palpatine. The histories hadn't mentioned that his victory over the assassins had come at such a terrible cost. Perhaps that was also what had happened to his eyes. A shiver ran up Eli's back. The eyes were bright and intelligent, all-knowing and utterly powerful. But they were strange, unique, disturbing, damaged perhaps by the same treachery that had ravaged his face. Intelligence, knowledge, power. Even more than with Thrawn, a sense of complete mastery over everything around him. The Emperor watched in silence as the party walked toward him. Park led the way, Barriss and Eli behind him, followed by Thrawn and the Navy trooper and stormtrooper witnesses. The guard contingent Park had brought remained outside the door, 6 of the Imperial guards having taken over escort duty. It seemed to take forever to reach the throne. Eli wondered how close they would be permitted to approach and how Captain Park would know when he had reached that point. The question was answered as Park came to within 5 meters, and the 2 Imperial guards at the foot of the steps glided to positions directly in front of him. Park stopped. The rest of them followed suit and waited. And waited. It was probably only 5 seconds, but to Eli it felt a medium-sized eternity. The entire throne room was utterly still, utterly silent. The only sound was the thudding of his pulse in his ears, the only movement, the shaking of his arms and his sleeves. Captain Park, the Emperor said at last, his gravelly voice neutral. I'm told you brought me a gift. Eli winced. A gift? For the Chiss of the stories, that would have been a deadly insult. Thrawn was behind him, and Eli didn't dare turn around, but he could imagine the expression on that proud face. I do, Your Majesty, Park said, bowing low. A warrior reportedly of a species known as the Chiss. Indeed, the Emperor said, his voice going even drier. And what, pray tell, would you have me do with him? If I may, Your Majesty, Thrawn put in before Park could answer, I am not merely a gift, I am also a resource. One you have never seen like of before, and may never see again. You would do well to utilize me. Would I? The Emperor said, sounding amused. Certainly you are a resource of unlimited confidence. What exactly do you offer, Chiss? As a start, I offer information, Thrawn said. If he was offended, Eli couldn't hear it in his voice. There are threats lurking in the unknown regions, threats that will someday find your empire. I am familiar with many of them. I will learn of them soon enough on my own, the Emperor countered placidly. Can you offer anything more? Perhaps you will learn of them in time to defeat them, Thrawn said. Perhaps you will not. What more do I offer? I offer my military skill. You could utilize that skill in making plans to seek out and eliminate these dangers. These threats you speak of, the Emperor said, I presume they're not simply threats to my empire? No, Your Majesty, Thrawn said. They are also threats to my people. And you seek to eliminate all threats to your people? I do. The Emperor's yellowish eyes seemed to glitter. And you wish to help of my empire? Your assistance would be welcome. You wish to assist the people who exiled you? The Emperor said. Or was Captain Park incorrect? He spoke correctly, Thrawn said. I was indeed exiled. Yet you seek to protect them. Why? Because they are my people. And if they withhold their gratitude and refuse to accept you back, what then? There was a slight pause, and Eli had the eerie sense that Thrawn was giving the Emperor one of those small smiles he was so good at. I do not need their permission to protect them, Your Majesty, nor do I expect their thanks. I've seen others with your sense of nobility, the Emperor said. Most fell by the wayside when their naive selfishness collided with the real world. I have faced the real world, as you call it. You have indeed, the Emperor said. What exactly do you wish from my empire? A state of mutual gain, Thrawn said. I offer my knowledge and skill to you now in exchange for your consideration to my people in the future. And when that future comes, what if I refuse to grant that consideration? Then I will have gambled and lost, Thrawn said calmly. But I have until that time to convince you that my goals and your goals do coincide. Interesting, the Emperor murmured. Tell me, if you serve the Empire, yet a threat arose against your people, where would your loyalties lie? Which of us would command your allegiance? I see no conflict in sharing of information. I'm not speaking of information, the Emperor said. I'm speaking of service. There was a short pause. If I were to serve the Empire, you would command my allegiance. What guarantee do you offer? My word is my guarantee, Thrawn said. Perhaps your servant can speak to the strength of that vow. My servant? The Emperor asked, his eyes flicking to Park. I do not refer to Captain Park, Thrawn said. I speak of another. Perhaps I assumed incorrectly that he was your servant, yet he always spoke highly of Chancellor Palpatine. The Emperor leaned forward a little, his yellowish eyes glittering. And his name? Skywalker, Thrawn said. Anakin Skywalker.
And that's the end of Chapter 2, friends, of Star Wars Thrawn. There it is. As we ended, we got the big name, Anakin Skywalker. Thrawn knows who Anakin Skywalker is. Of course, Palpatine knows. Exciting stuff. I'm excited to read this again with you all. Thank you for joining me. Just to let you know where this place, I should have prefaced this. This takes place in the Star Wars timeline here. Thrawn takes place right after Revenge of the Sith, before the Rebels TV series, before Rogue One, and before A New Hope. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you, Amanda Panda. This has been fun, folks. I hope you've had as much fun as I have reading this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. Just as a reminder, I will be doing this hopefully every Tuesday at this time. I may change this up to the evening. I'm not sure. I normally stream board games at 7 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Thursdays with friends or family. But I do enjoy reading. As a goal, or just as something I want to do more often here on Twitch. I want to do different things, a variety of things I want to do, including reading. So just as a reminder, Star Wars: The Republic, High Republic, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule is now available online and at bookstores everywhere. I am also reading Star Wars Thrawn. So we read part of Light of the Jedi just as a preview. Please pick it up. I'm also going to be reading this year, over the one chapter per session, Star Wars Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. So much fun. So tonight, Michelle is joining me at 7 p.m. Pacific for Tabletop Tonight. We're playing a couple of games. We're going to be playing Paris, La Cité de la Lumière. This is from Devere Games. This is a fun two-player tile placement games. Really cool, really streamlined. It's about a half-hour game. And then after that, it's 2 for Tuesday. We play 2 games. Similo, History. I've never played this until Michelle and I ran through it the other day. This is fun. It's a 10-minute co-op game, a deduction game. You're going to have a tableau of cards of different figures from history, and we're going to try. One of us will be giving clues. The other will be trying to find out what figure from history we're talking about. And what's going to be fun, chat. People in chat, you're all going to be able to participate as well. I have this one. Thanks to our friends at Luma. I've also got Similo Myths, and Similo Fables. You can mix and match. We're going to start with history, though. And depending on time, we'll see which other ones we play. So that's going to wrap it up here, friends. Thank you again for joining me. Let's raid someone. I don't. Has Ross started yet? We got Slivers. We got Bram Beard Gaming. Looking forward to seeing games. Thank you, DJ Best for Super Best for hanging. Zanzibar's streaming. You know, let's raid Slivers. Slivers always a great support of our channel, so I'm going to raid. I think he's playing video games right now, so please hang tight. Thank you for joining me, folks. I'm going to start the raid in just a second. Where is the raid channel? It's right here. Raid, Slivers, start raid. Something went wrong. Try, let me refresh the raid portion here. Yeah, looking forward to hanging out with y'all again, playing games. There's that. Start raid. Come on. Raid is not happening. What's the command again? Is it /raid? /raid and then channel. What is Slivers channel? I think it's just Slivers, right? You already have a raid in progress. Okay, what is going on? I don't know what's going on with the raid command, folks. I don't know if y'all... Let's try it again. Raid channel. Start raid. Yeah, something is wacky over here. Tell you what, I'm going to restart this browser. Anyways, yeah, if the raid doesn't happen, it is what it is. I'm going to give it one more shot here. Thank you again for joining me, friends. This has been Ruel Reads, Rolling with Ruel. I'll be back tonight with my wife, Michelle. We're going to play 2 great games. I'll see you later. Stick around for the raid. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Hopefully this works. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Bye.